Hello, Wealth Nation. Today, our guest of honor is Dr. Tom Burns. Hi, Dr. Tom Burns. How
Hi,
are you
Meet.
doing?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for allowing us an opportunity to host you on our Wealth Evolution Club podcast. It's a privilege and honor to have you as a VIP guest launch series episode number 1.
I'm
Thank you
honored.
again.
Thank you. I'm honored. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Wealth Nation, our guest today, Tom, is an entrepreneur and an orthopedic surgeon in Austin, Texas. He is currently a physician for the United States Sky Team and travels worldwide with them. He has over 25 years of real estate experience involving acquisition, development, and management of multiple asset types. In addition to co founding and managing a freestanding full service hospital, he has owned and developed property locally and internationally and has participated in the acquisition and development of over 250 million of real estate. Dr. Burns is a principal of Presario Ventures, a private equity real estate company in Austin, Texas. He is an author and sought after speaker and is frequently featured in nationally circulated print articles and popular real estate oriented podcasts. Tom has been financially independent for a decade. His mission is to help physicians create financial independence so, like him, they can enjoy medicine with the passion that first drew them to the profession. Tremendous. Congratulations, Dr. Tom, for all your success.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Tom, I heard that you recently launched a book called Rich Doctor. Please share with our listeners about your book, what inspired you to write the book, and your journey.
Sure. Uh, it's no, a friend of mine is Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote
Okay.
the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so
Mm-hmm.
about 3 years ago, he sat with me one day at lunch and said, you've got a story. You ought to write a book. So, Mr. Never willing to pass on a challenge, I said, okay. So it was sort of his idea. He even helped with the title. But during that process is when I really got a good feel of how a lot of physicians were feeling and how trapped some of them were feeling. And so that's really what bore out the mission. I was sort of tripping along on my own real estate path and realized that there were others that maybe could follow along and maybe I could do some help, do some good for them.
That's really kind of you, so thoughtful of you. Now, Dr. Tom, I heard about physician burnout. What is it? Is it something real? Could you please share with us?
Sure. Burnout in any workplace, it's emotional, physical, and it's just emotional and physical exhaustion. It's basically when people feel that they don't have a way to get out of it. They don't have the resources to get out of a situation. They feel trapped. And so every day is just a grind.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, for physicians, a lot of people don't feel sorry for doctors. And maybe you shouldn't because we make a nice living and it's really a wonderful profession. However, some of them are really under a lot of pressure and a lot of financial pressure from costs to get just to
Mm-hmm.
become a doctor. It's
Mm-hmm.
wildly expensive these days. And
Okay.
they're getting into situations where they're more employees than they are running their own ship. And that gets a little rough when somebody non-medical asks you to keep churning the machine rather than taking care of patients, which is why you got into medicine. So it becomes a real difficult tug of war for physicians who really like the profession.
So, Dr. Tom, when you are finally financially free, do you still practice?
I do.
You
So it's been
do?
a decade now,
Yeah,
and
okay.
I really enjoy it. I got into
Okay.
medicine because I was an athlete, and so I got into sports medicine as an orthopedic doctor. So it still gives me a chance to hang around the people that I like to be with, and I love my partners. I love the people I work with. I just do it in the mornings, and I don't do it every morning. So it's a lot of fun now.
Oh, wow. Awesome. So, what is the difference that you have observed, like when you were working, when you were not financially free, while when you are financially free? So, what is the difference that you have observed?
Sure, I was able to make it more fun because
Awesome.
if if you're if you're working to make a living, the old
Mm-hmm.
quote, work to create a life rather than work to make a living. And
Mm-hmm.
so once there was enough money coming in passively, whether I was sleeping, vacationing, or working, it covered the bills. I didn't have to worry so much about how many patients I saw, how long I spent with them, how many surgeries I did, and I didn't have to do some of the things that were less pleasant.
Okay.
Some of the hospitals wanted us to do certain things, stay up at night and take call. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to do those because I wanted to stay at home with my kids. So I
Obviously.
started eliminating things that were pressure points to enjoying my work life and just my life in general, and everything got more fun. So I was able to spend more time with my patients and get to know them, and it's just been a joy the last 10 years.
Awesome, awesome. And I learned are doing that you have done some development also. And I feel like it's very challenging and mostly the operators try to stay away from it. What inspired to go into that field?
Yeah, it really happened by default. So
Okay.
my career started buying smaller properties and larger properties, and then my development experience spans office development and multifamily development. So what really happened was I had reached a point where I thought I'd sort of learned as much as I could on my own. I started learning things. I jumped in. I took some action and made mistakes, and I was learning and getting better. But I really needed an expanse. Needed to expand my knowledge. So I went to
Okay.
somebody that I knew that
Okay.
was a developer, and I said, I like what he was a friend of mine, but I said, I like what you do. Will you teach me? And he said, sure. So for close to 2 years, I worked with him, for him,
Wow.
doing deals and didn't get paid, but learned a lot. Well, that spawned the development of our first medical complex. We built a rather large medical complex. Along that process, as sort of the market sort of got to know who I was, or I started to get to know other people, I ended up connecting with another partner who is a close friend to this day, and he and I started doing projects. Well, we happened to have 16 acres of land right when the Great Recession started. So the only thing to do with it, you couldn't sell it. So we decided to develop on it. And so we learned by the seat of our pants.
Oh wow. Awesome. That impressive. So what is the asset class that you invested? Do you invest in class A properties, B or C properties? And why do you pick up that particular asset class?
Sure, I will invest in anything that makes cash flow is the short
Awesome.
answer. But most
Okay.
of most of our projects are class A just because of the fact that we develop most of our product. So it comes out always obviously it comes out class A. But we have purchased class B in the past, the traditional value add process. We I mostly class A. I guess that was a long answer for saying most of our stuff is class A.
Okay. So what's your strategy for what's your hold and exit strategy? So do you
Oh,
do it for a long term hold or like typical operators, you do the acquisition, execute your business plan and hold it maybe for 3 to 5 years and exit?
we're a little more gray haired, and I
Okay.
love cash flow. So
Okay.
our perfect deal is develop the project,
Mm-hmm.
stabilize it with tenants, cash flow, and then when the amortization and the debt itself leaves enough of a delta, we'll refinance. And so in our world, that's about 6.5 years. It may take longer in the current environment, but in an interest rate decline, when interest rates were declining, that time period could be shortened. But our favorite project is one where we refinance, get everybody their
Mm-hmm.
money back, and still keep 100% of the property. We just continue to cash flow. It helps us with taxes going forward. Now, should somebody offer us money that makes sense, we just do the pros and cons of it. We'll still sell. So we have a hybrid. We built some
Okay.
projects. We built some projects with commercial debt that are designed to sell at 3 or 4 years, depending on
Okay.
stabilization. We
Mm-hmm.
build other projects that are designed for long-term holds. However, they've got assumable loans so that if it turns out that we want to make an exit, we have the ability to exit that.
Okay, sounds fair. What was the biggest challenge when you were getting started?
For me, it was breaking the doctor paradigm, and I still fight it, and that's the do-it-yourself thought
Oh,
process. So
okay.
it was really learning to create a team or to hire the person that had much more expertise than me and let them do their job. So that was the hardest thing. But once I really got that thought process, put the right team together, things can be repeated a lot faster, and you can do more deals quicker and with more efficiency.
Awesome. What are the markets that you are currently interested in and why those markets?
Sure. Our firm we used to be in 3 states, pretty much here in the Southwest, but we have divested of our New Mexico and Oklahoma assets. And until, well, still currently, our entire business plan is in the state of Texas. We
Oh,
are
wow.
looking at some things in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
but the state of Texas has enough business for us. And pretty much we're right up and down Interstate 35, which just goes from north to south in Texas. There's a lot of growth. There's been, I think, over 370,000 people have moved into Texas just in the past 12 months. It's a
Absolutely.
hot
Yeah.
job market.
Mm-hmm.
Austin itself just got Tesla and Oracle, and we've got all the names these days. So jobs, our business follows
Okay.
jobs. So we're
Okay.
staying in Texas for now, but we like Florida too.
Okay. So you have done mostly multifamily and medical office buildings?
Primarily. So a few
Okay.
other assets, some student housing and some other things, but the bulk of it's been medical and multifamily.
What do you think about the senior housing or the assisted living? Do you see a scope there?
I'm not an expert.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an expert of much probably, but I've heard a lot of overbuilding in the senior housing. I don't know that for a fact.
Mm-hmm.
I've just heard some people that are in it are having, you have to really know what you're doing right now. And
Absolutely.
so I don't necessarily know the reasons because it's not my asset class.
Oh, awesome. Gotcha. Because I have heard, I know that each single day almost 10,000 baby boomers are retiring. So it's projected like next few years there could be a good market for that.
What I've heard is that probably true, and it might be just a little early right now. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe some overbuilding now. Some started earlier, but again, not
Mm-hmm.
my asset class. So this is all third-party information for me.
Okay.
But that's kind of how I've heard it. So silver tsunami, some people call it.
Oh, awesome. So how do you source your deals? Where is the source? How do you get the deals from?
Sure, multiple sources. I just got one today from
Okay.
just they come from it comes from networking,
Okay.
and not purposeful networking, just making sure you're out there. And I've been at it for 25 years, so I have people,
Wow.
we connect with for different ways. The people in our office
Mm-hmm.
constantly talking to brokers. So
Okay.
we have buyers and sellers brokers all over
Mm-hmm.
Texas.
Okay.
We have our business connections, and then
Mm-hmm.
people. I had two simply cold connection. Well, I had a lot of cold connections, but two this week that made sense or something that we might like to explore. And so
Okay.
it comes from everywhere, but it comes from being out in the world and not just behind a screen or behind a book.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, when you are underwriting the deals, you might be coming across a lot of red flags. Could you please share some red flags?
Sure. Um, in our office, I feel like I'm the black cloud. I always want to make sure that we're not making big assumptions. And so if you look at a pro forma and everything has to go perfect to make a reasonable return, that scares me.
Absolutely.
That just scares me. So I want to see. So on my own pro forma, I want to make sure that we ourselves are conservative, and sometimes on the team we all help each other. And one person might think something's a conservative metric, and it's not necessarily. For instance, rent. At one point, somebody said, "I only put 3% rent for growth factor,
Wow,
which is pretty normal."
it
I
is.
had them go back and do a 20-year average on that particular market, and the average rent over 20 years, which included the run up from 2008 to 2019 at the time, the average rent increase was 1.9%. So things like that. So
Okay.
I don't want to see over optimism on a pro forma.
Absolutely. That sounds very conservative. And What is the biggest rookie mistake that you did when you were starting?
Oh, I made so many. It's hard to pick out the one biggest one. Mostly not looking at the downside,
Mm-hmm.
assuming that pro formas are truth and everything's going to work well. Looking, getting excited about the deal and not checking the people.
Okay.
I have
Yep.
invested with people who didn't have the most ethical intentions. So looking only at the upside, not considering the downside. That's a good way to start. Warren Buffett says, "First lose no money." So I've tried to live
Absolutely.
by that after losing quite a bit when I was learning.
Okay. So when you are looking for a partner, what are the values that you look for?
I want, and, yeah, you could just say integrity, which is an overused word. I want honesty. I
Mm-hmm.
want directness. I don't want somebody that's going to hold things too close to the breast, because the two of you, it's as important as a marriage, because you've
Absolutely.
got to trust each other. So I always say that I've run through a lot of partners, and some of them are in jail and some of them have been raided by the FBI, to be honest with you. But I
Oh,
have
wow.
two that I can leave my checkbook and my family with and leave the country, and I know everybody will be safe. So you just have to make sure that there's somebody that's got your back when the time comes. And sometimes you can't tell until the chips are down.
Absolutely. Completely agree. So what kind of deals do you do? Are those mostly syndications or JV deals, or what kind of deals do you do?
Yeah, we do quite a few. We have
Okay.
a lot of time we will JV with another
Mm-hmm.
developer. We'll
Mm-hmm.
bring the asset management, the debt, the equity, and sometimes we'll have somebody else do the boots on the ground development. We have done that, but primarily these days we leave that to somebody else. We'll as an operator, if we have an acquisition, we'll acquire and we'll fully operate that property. And we tend to operate the development properties as well, but we have a JV with a developer. We also do pref equity deals where we'll bring mezz debt, pref equity
Okay.
to a project if it provides a good return for our investors, because that type of deal, our investors don't participate in the upside, so we want them to have a really nice return with some downside protection. So we'll do that.
Okay. So when you are doing a deal, what kind of return you are looking for? What's the cash flow that's ideal for you, and what's the IRR you are looking for?
Sure. We would like a 1.7 to 2 IRR,
Okay.
and uh, and excuse me, a 1.7 to 2 multiple at 5 years. We're
Mm-hmm.
looking at a mid to high teens IRR these days. We find them occasionally in the 20s, but we haven't for a while. On a straight up development deal, it's usually going to be mid to high teens.
Okay.
Cash flow in a development deal, you have the first 2 years is zero.
Nothing.
Maybe a
Absolutely.
dribble at the end of the second year, but typically zero. And one of our debt products, the way it's used, occasionally at the end of year two, you'll get a big chunk of money back. But we start in year three, and it's mid to 5-6% return in the first year, and then it tends to grow up to the high single digits on a pure cash flow basis.
Awesome. Sounds interesting. So, Dr. Tom, our listeners are mostly doctors like you. What advice would you like to share with them for someone who is just starting?
Sure. Just, yeah, I mean, I started with zero training, and
Oh,
zero training. I just got out there and was just too aggressive or too dumb or whatever to stop. So read, listen to podcasts, and there's a certain amount of education you can get from doing that. You get your best education doing what we're doing here, listening to a podcast like this, and
mm-hmm.
then in non-COVID times, getting with other people. That's where all my deals have come from. That's where I've learned the most. I've lost some from being with other people, but that's where your education really comes. And you learn fast when your money's on the line and when you're with somebody else. That's where you'll find partners. You can find teammates, partners, people that'll accelerate your progress, but just start. And then the final and best bit of advice is don't quit. It's
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the negative part of achievers like you or us or me is like that we have been so successful in a career, and when real estate is completely new to us, so that fear of failure holds us back. Was that something that you faced?
absolutely,
And how
absolutely.
did you overcome it?
The world just beat it out of me. I failed so much. I had to figure it must have been part of the process. And that's an honest thing. And we're if you're a physician, engineer, lawyer, everybody wants us to be right, and we're used to being
Absolutely.
right a lot. That's how we got to where we were, by having a high percentage of right answers on tests, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, life, the one. I don't know who's made the quote, but the most successful guy is the guy that's made the most mistakes. So you
Absolutely.
have to just realize they're going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
They can't eat you.
Mm-hmm.
Try not to don't risk your whole life savings, your whole portfolio, your whole anything on one deal. Make sure you've got your risks hedged, understand what you're going to lose if you lose it all, and then keep going, because you might lose some, but hopefully you win two, you lose one. One step backward, two steps forward. You'll get smarter and smarter each time. You'll
Absolutely.
hopefully make less of those mistakes. Never waste a good mistake. You want to take the lesson you're going to get. So when the world presses down and crumples me into a little ball, I just figure some sort of lessons happening. And
Absolutely.
this has taken a while. I've got some gray hair. You can see
Absolutely.
it wasn't like that at the beginning, but
Mm-hmm.
just be prepared. Look for them and expect them. They won't be so painful when they come.
Awesome. So, did you started as a passive investor or all your deals were active?
I actually started active.
Oh,
I
wow.
Because it was so long ago. I started thinking about this in the late 80s. And then I
Awesome.
was I was still in my training, so I didn't have any money anyway. And
Okay.
so I I read, I learned, and when it came time, I went out and bought something. I just went and bought something. And then I bought another one, got really good in that particular market and bought some more stuff, and that's when things kind of grew from there. It wasn't until many years later that I started investing in other people's projects, people that had expertise outside of mine. I was really good with student housing, some mobile home stuff,
Mm-hmm.
medical, multifamily, but I didn't know much about retail. So I started investing with people that were just experts in that area and in the oil, that sort of thing.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you, Dr. Tom, for adding tremendous value to our listeners. How can our listeners reach out to you?
Sure, please. You can send an email to hello@richdoctor.com. We'll answer. I'd love to talk to people, and visit the website. It's richdoctor.com. There's free resources there for you to use. If you're just getting started out, there's resources there that'll help you, spreadsheets, financial statements, white papers on some things that'll explain a bit about real estate. And I try to put out a newsletter every week or two. I'm still learning how to do that, but give some tips each week or two. So it's just a good place for everybody to learn and buy my book,
Absolutely.
hopefully.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Tom. We appreciate it. And now we sign off. Until next time, Wealth Nation, live a life that is filled with freedom, fun, and fulfillment. And I'll see you next in 2 weeks.